Imagine being trapped in a world of complete silence and darkness, unable to see or hear. This is the true story of a woman who faced that reality, yet found a way to change the world. To discover how she did it and feel more inspired in your own life, make sure you subscribe and turn on all notifications so you don't miss our future stories. So let's begin. Helen Keller was born on a warm day, June 27, 1880, in a small, quiet town in America called Tuscumbia in the state of Alabama. She was born into a peaceful home with a family that loved her very much. Her parents, Arthur and Kate Keller, were so happy to welcome their new baby girl. They gave her the name Helen Adams Keller. At that time, they had no idea that their precious little baby was about to face a challenge so huge that no one could have ever imagined it. For the first year and a half of her life, Helen was like any other baby. She was healthy, happy, and beginning to explore the world. But then, when she was just 19 months old, she became terribly sick. No one knew exactly what the illness was. The doctors thought it might have been scarlet fever or meningitis, but they were not sure. The sickness was severe, and it came on very suddenly. This mysterious illness took something precious from Helen. It took away her ability to see and her ability to hear. Imagine that for a moment. At such a very young age, she could no longer see her mother's smile or her father's kind face. She could no longer hear their loving voices when they called her name. In an instant, the world around her became completely silent and completely dark. For any child, our sight and our hearing are the most important ways we connect with the world. It is how we learn, how we communicate, how we feel safe. But for little Helen, everything she had just started to know disappeared. The world became a great mystery, a confusing puzzle. She could not hear people talking to her. She could not see the things around her. Can you imagine the pain and the deep frustration she must have felt? It is something that most of us can never truly understand. As Helen grew older, her frustration grew with her. She was a bright, curious child, but she was trapped. She could not express her needs or her feelings. Her parents, who loved her dearly, did not know how to help her. They could not understand what she wanted. It was as if she was living in a world where no one could reach her, and she could not reach anyone. She would often get very angry. She would kick and scream and throw things. Imagine being a little girl who cannot talk, who cannot hear, and who cannot see. How would you feel? Helen felt confused and sad and angry all at the same time. But deep inside of her, even in that darkness, she had an incredible spirit. She had a powerful mind that wanted to learn. And this spirit, this strength inside of her, would soon change everything. One of the hardest parts of being a child is learning how to communicate, isn't it? For most of us, it happens naturally. We learn to talk by listening. We learn what words mean by seeing people's faces and watching what they do. But for Helen, it was all a puzzle, and she had to try to solve it all by herself. It was an incredibly difficult and lonely journey. But Helen was about to meet someone who would change her life forever. That person was Anne Sullivan. Anne was a teacher who came to Helen's home when Helen was almost 7 years old. Anne understood struggle. She was partially blind herself, so she knew what it was like to live in a world that was not made for you. But she was also incredibly determined. She believed she could help Helen. She was ready to see the world in a new way through Helen's experience. Even though it was very, very hard at the beginning, Anne did not give up on Helen. She was patient, she was kind, and she was so passionate about teaching. On the very first day they met, Anne began to show Helen a new way to communicate. She did this by spelling words into Helen's hand. It was a slow and difficult process. Anne would press the letters of a word one by one into Helen's palm. Think about how hard that must have been for Helen. She could not see Anne's face to know if she was smiling or if she was serious. She could not hear her voice to understand her tone. Everything Anne did had to be taught in a way that Helen could feel with her hands. One of the most famous and beautiful moments in Helen's life came a few weeks after Anne arrived and took Helen outside to the old water pump. As one hand held a mug, Anne took Helen's other hand and placed it under the stream of cool running water. At that exact moment, as the water flowed over Helen's fingers, Anne spelled the word W-A-T-E-R into her other palm. She spelled it again and again. And then suddenly, something amazing happened. A light turned on inside Helen's mind. She understood. She finally realized that this thing, this wonderful, cool thing running over her hand, was water. And she understood that the letters Anne was spelling were connected to it. The word was the thing. It was as if the whole world had suddenly opened up to her in a way she could finally understand. This moment was the turning point for Helen. From that day on, she was filled with a powerful desire to learn everything she could. She was no longer trapped in a silent, dark world. She had found a key, a way to connect with the world around her, and it gave her the strength to keep going. But her journey was far from over. It was only the beginning. Helen was now in a world where most people could not imagine how she could live, let alone succeed. But her teacher, Anne Sullivan, worked with her tirelessly every single day. It was a long and slow process, but Helen was not afraid of hard work. She had something powerful inside her, a deep desire to learn and to connect with the world, no matter how difficult it seemed. Every day, Anne would spell new words into Helen's hand, and Helen would feel the objects they were connected to. For example, if Anne spelled the word flower, she would gently guide Helen's hand to touch a real flower. Helen could feel its soft petals and smell its sweet scent. This is how she learned to understand what the words meant. It wasn't just words that Helen had to learn. She also had to learn to read and write. Since she couldn't see, she used a special system called Braille. Braille is a way of reading and writing that uses raised dots on a page. Helen could feel these dots with her fingers and understand the letters and words. Imagine trying to read and write without using your eyes at all. How difficult do you think that would be? But Helen was determined. She did not let her blindness stop her. She practiced for hours and hours, feeling the tiny dots building words and sentences in her mind. Anne didn't only teach Helen to read and write. She also taught her how to speak. Now, learning to speak when you cannot hear your own voice might sound impossible. But Anne was a creative teacher. She taught Helen how to feel the vibrations in her throat and on her lips when she made sounds. Helen would place her fingers on Anne's throat as Anne spoke, feeling the movement. Then she would try to make the same movements herself. Over time, slowly but surely, Helen was able to speak words and communicate with others. Her speech was difficult for people to understand at first. But with Anne's endless patience, Helen's voice became clearer and stronger. By the time Helen was 10 years old, she had already learned so much. She was not just a young girl who couldn't see or hear anymore. She was a student, a learner, a person full of knowledge and ideas. But Helen did not stop there. She dreamed of something bigger. She wanted to go to school just like other children her age. In the year 1894, at the age of 14, Helen went to the Wright Humason School for the Deaf in New York City. And there, she did something that no one expected her to do. She excelled. She worked hard every single day, learning more than ever before. After that, Helen was accepted to Radcliffe College. This was one of the best schools for women in the United States at the time. This was an incredible achievement, especially for someone who was both blind and deaf. Helen wasn't just happy to be in college, she was determined to do her very best. She worked with a lot of support from Anne, who was always by her side. Anne continued to help Helen with her lessons, sitting next to her in every class. She would spell out every word the professor said into Helen's hand. The two of them would spend hours together with Anne spelling out the words from heavy textbooks. Even though this was incredibly challenging, Helen never gave up. In 1904, she graduated from Radcliffe College. Helen Keller became the first person who was blind and deaf to earn a Bachelor of Arts degree. Can you imagine how proud Helen must have been in that moment? It was a huge victory, not just for her, but for people everywhere. It showed the world that even the greatest challenges could be overcome with determination and hard work. Helen's education didn't stop with books and classes. She was passionate about using her voice to help others. She began giving speeches about her life, sharing her story of overcoming challenges. She wanted to encourage people who were facing their own difficulties to keep going. Through her writing and her speaking, Helen became a powerful figure, inspiring thousands of people all around the world. She also became an activist. She used her fame and her influence to fight for the rights of people with disabilities. She was passionate about making the world a better, more fair place for people who were often forgotten or ignored. She advocated for better education for disabled children, for better treatment, and for equal rights. Her voice became one of the most important in the fight for the rights of the disabled community. Helen's life was filled with hard work, dedication, and passion. But it was also filled with love. She had a deep and beautiful friendship with Anne Sullivan, who became more than just a teacher to her. Anne was Helen's lifelong companion, her guide and her supporter, always by her side, helping her achieve more than anyone could have ever imagined. Helen was also very close to her family, and together they shared many moments of joy and pride in her incredible achievements. Through all of this, Helen showed the world that it was possible to overcome any obstacle. Helen Keller's journey did not stop after she graduated from college. In fact, her most important and influential work began in the years that followed. After achieving such incredible success in her education, she became determined to use her voice to help others. She wanted to make sure that the world knew that people with disabilities could accomplish anything they set their minds to, just like anyone else. One of the first things Helen did after college was to begin writing. She had so many stories to tell about her life, about her struggles, and about her triumphs. Her first book, The Story of My Life, was published in 1903, even before she graduated. This book would go on to inspire people all over the world. It was a detailed story of her early years, her education, and her amazing relationship with her teacher, Anne Sullivan. In her book, Helen spoke openly about the challenges she faced. She wrote about her frustrations, her struggles, and the doubts she sometimes had about herself. But more importantly, she shared how she overcame those challenges. She explained how she learned to use her other senses, her sense of touch, smell, and taste, to experience the world in a way that most people never thought was possible. Her book became an inspiration to millions of people. It showed them that no matter how difficult life gets, we always have the ability to adapt and to overcome. But Helen wasn't just a writer. She was also a powerful speaker. She traveled all over the world giving speeches about the importance of education for people with disabilities and the need for a more inclusive society. She didn't just talk about overcoming challenges, she was living proof of it. She showed people that no matter the obstacle, we can push forward and succeed. She used her own voice, which she had worked so hard to develop, to tell people that their limitations did not have to define them. Helen became one of the most famous women in the world. But even though she had gained international fame, she remained humble. She never thought of herself as a superhero or as someone special. She always believed that anyone, regardless of their situation, could accomplish great things if they just didn't give up. One of Helen's most powerful messages was about the importance of helping others. She was a passionate advocate for the rights of disabled people. She traveled the world not just giving speeches, but also working with governments and organizations to improve the lives of people with disabilities. She fought for better schools, better jobs, and better living conditions for them. She believed that everyone, no matter their circumstances, deserved an opportunity to succeed. But Helen's life wasn't only about work. She also loved to enjoy the simple things in life. Even though she couldn't see the sky or hear the birds, Helen loved to feel the warmth of the sun on her skin. She loved to feel a cool breeze on her face and the joy of a good conversation with her friends and family. She enjoyed reading her Braille books, feeling the stories come alive under her fingertips. She loved feeling the beauty of nature. Despite the challenges she faced every single day, Helen found happiness in the smallest of moments. She taught us that happiness is not about having everything. It's about appreciating what you have. Helen also had a very strong belief in the power of service, of giving back to the world. She dedicated much of her life to various causes, including the American Foundation for the Blind, where she worked to improve the lives of other blind people. She believed that by helping others, we could make the world a better place for everyone. Her voice was so strong that she even became involved in politics. She spoke out for the rights of women, the poor, and anyone who faced discrimination. She was a strong supporter of women's suffrage, the right for women to vote. Through her work, she tried to make sure that everyone had the same opportunities to succeed, no matter their race, gender, or disability. Even in her later years, Helen continued to inspire people with her strength and her words. She wrote several more books, including autobiographies and books on social issues. She met with presidents and leaders from around the world, talking to them about how they could help improve the lives of people with disabilities. Her work was never about herself. It was always about helping others. But like every person, Helen faced great sadness in her life. In 1936, her dear friend and teacher Anne Sullivan passed away. This was a deeply painful moment in Helen's life. Anne had been not only her teacher, but her soulmate and constant companion for almost 50 years. Losing Anne was like losing a part of herself. But even though she was heartbroken, Helen did not give up. She continued her work, knowing that Anne would have wanted her to keep pushing forward. In the years that followed, Helen's health began to decline. She was still active, traveling and speaking when she could. But she knew that her time on Earth was limited. However, Helen was not afraid. She had lived an incredible life, a life full of challenges, achievements, and victories. As she grew older, she continued to teach others the most important lesson of all: never ever give up. Her mind remained sharp, and she still loved to read, write, and learn. Even in her final years, she kept up with the news and the struggles of people with disabilities. She was always working on new ways to raise awareness. She also continued to advocate for women's rights, social justice, and human equality values she had fought for her entire life. But the years were not kind to Helen physically. In 1961, she suffered a stroke that affected her health significantly. But as always, Helen did not let that stop her spirit. She continued to inspire others, often receiving letters from people around the world telling her how much her story had impacted their lives. She was a living example of someone who had overcome incredible adversity. Even in her most difficult moments, she still chose to shine and help others. As she aged, Helen grew more frail, but she never lost her sense of purpose. She continued to work with her longtime companion and assistant Polly Thompson, and after Polly's death with another assistant. They helped her communicate and continue her advocacy work. Even though she could no longer travel as much as she once did, her presence was still felt around the world. She made sure her voice would never go silent. In 1968, after an extraordinary life of accomplishments, Helen Keller passed away peacefully in her sleep. She was 87 years old. Her death marked the end of a life lived with incredible determination, but it also marked the beginning of a legacy, a story that would continue to inspire people for generations to come. Helen Keller's words were not just words. They were lessons for the world. Every single phrase she spoke came from a place of strength, courage, and a deep understanding of life's challenges. Her ability to see the possibilities in the impossible continues to resonate with millions of people today. Let's look at some of her most famous quotes and the lessons we can learn from them. One of her famous quotes is, "Alone we can do so little. Together we can do so much." This quote reminds us of the power of unity and teamwork. No matter how strong we are as individuals, we are always stronger when we work together. We should remember that by supporting each other, we can overcome any obstacle. Another one is, "The only thing worse than being blind is having sight but no vision." But here Helen Keller teaches us that true vision doesn't come from our eyes. It comes from our heart and our mind. Vision is about seeing the bigger picture. It's about knowing where you want to go in life. It's about dreaming big and never giving up even when things seem difficult. She also said, "What I am looking for is not out there, it is in me." This is a powerful message. It tells us that the strength we need to overcome our challenges is already inside of us. Sometimes we might look for external solutions to our problems, but we must remember that self-belief, courage, and determination are qualities that live within us. Keep your face to the sunshine, and you cannot see a shadow. This is one of Helen's most positive and famous quotes. It teaches us the power of positivity. Even when life feels hard, if we choose to focus on the good, we will find light. It's not about ignoring the darkness, but about choosing to focus on what brings us hope and joy. And finally, life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. Life, as Helen Keller reminds us, is meant to be lived fully. It's about taking risks, facing our fears, and embracing each day as an adventure. If we live too cautiously, always afraid, we are not truly living. We must be brave and take every opportunity that life offers us. Helen Keller's life wasn't easy. It was filled with struggles and obstacles that most people could never imagine. Yet despite all of that, she lived a life that changed the world. What made her life so extraordinary was not that she was perfect, but that she was resilient. She was persistent, and she was unwilling to give up. Helen Keller teaches us so many things. Perhaps the most important lesson she gives us is to never give up, no matter our circumstances. She teaches us that challenges and difficulties are a part of life, but they do not have to define us. We are not defined by what happens to us, but by how we choose to respond. Her life shows us that anything is possible if we are willing to work hard. Stay committed and keep going, even when things seem impossible. She didn't let being deaf and blind stop her from achieving her dreams. In fact, those very challenges made her more determined to succeed and to inspire others to do the same. To everyone listening to this right now, Helen Keller's story is here to remind you of something incredibly important. Your problems are small compared to the possibilities that are within you. Whatever challenges you are facing in your life, whether they are big or small, you have the strength inside you to rise above them. You are more capable than you think. Helen Keller's story is proof that you don't need to see the world in the same way that others do to achieve greatness. You don't need to hear everything to make an impact. What you need is to believe in yourself, to stay focused on your dreams, and to never give up. Remember, life is not about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain. Every single person in this world has something amazing inside of them. You have the potential to make your dreams come true, no matter what obstacles you face. If Helen Keller could achieve all that she did, imagine what you can do. Don't let anything hold you back. Because just like Helen, you are capable of greatness. And please remember, you are not alone. There is always someone who believes in you, someone who is cheering you on. So keep moving forward, because the best is yet to come. Never give up, and let your light shine bright. Thank you for listening.